is saying in the chat boxes, I can hear but cannot be heard.
Right, so, that's me, but is it listed as Jason? Because it should be Dan.
It's Dan. It's listed as Daniel, but so we do place the lines on mute. But if you want to come off to ask a question or anything, you just hit *6, and then when you're done speaking, you hit *6 again to remute your line.
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
Yeah. We'll get started here in a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Deanna, would you do an audio check for me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for joining us on this fine Friday afternoon. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. I'm Lonnie Den. I am a nurse and Regional Vice President of Quality and Systems Improvement and Mission Lifeline for the Southwest Affiliate. And just a couple of housekeeping items. When you join the call, you're automatically just placed on mute. So if you need to come off mute to ask any questions, just hit *6. So it's not #6. I've made that mistake before. It's *6, and that will unmute yourself. And then if you hit *6 again, you'll be muted again. And then I just want to let you know that the slide set that we're using for today's presentation will be available, and we'll send that to everyone on the call. We also have a flyer, a one-pager that has all of the criteria that you're going to want to look at for this year, 2018, to be recognized in 2019. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest presenter, Jason Gilliam. He is a medical officer for Austin Travis County EMS. He has practiced as a paramedic with the City of Austin for over 20 years, and he's filled a variety of roles. Jason has worked in quality improvement for the last 10 years, and he became an IHI improvement coach in 2017. He is passionate about improving healthcare and helping other providers and developing strategies to understand their performance and improve. And we have been so fortunate to have Jason involved in a leadership role within our AHA Mission Lifeline Committee in the Austin region since its inception. I think was in 2018, or I'm sorry, not 2018, 2008. So he's been with us from the very beginning for the last 10 years, and he's continued to be involved. So grateful for you, Jason, taking the time out, making the time for us today, and for presenting the information about Mission Lifeline EMS program and recognition. I will turn it over to you, and Deanna will advance the slides. Let her know when you're ready for the next one.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome, everybody. So this is kind of cool. I'm excited to do this. So if we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, we're here to talk about what Mission Lifeline is and how to get recognized with it and what the joy is. Oh, that's nice. This is our at Austin Travis County EMS. We started pursuing the Mission Lifeline goal as soon as we heard about it in 2012, 2013, when there was some idea that it was going to come. And then we pursued it, starting then, kind of aligning our data, and then we were able to get it in 2014. And we've maintained it because we've seen it as something that's valuable, and it's a good to have an outside measure that we could measure against. So we've enjoyed that. It's been a lot of work, but I think it's been worth it, and it's helped us to focus our efforts. So we'll kind of talk about that, and I'd encourage you guys, if you haven't done it yet, to join in. It's good to have an outside measure that you can use, and it's free, which was a big thing for us also. Free is good, right? We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So Mission Lifeline is, I don't know how many people out there are on the webinar have already received recognition in the past or not. Hold on, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you, or I can.
Will you show us AOVS Fitness Center, please?
Are you there, Jason?
All right, I am here now. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you well, Jason.
Okay, great. Great. So
it's so quiet because everybody's placed on mute. So.
Yeah, I know. It's so disorienting. I'm used to everyone yelling. I got 2 kids. Everybody always yells at me. The program itself is gives us an opportunity to kind of celebrate our achievement, which is really kind of nice. And it's not meant to be competitive from one agency to the next. I see it as a wonderful opportunity to focus our own troops, to get everybody kind of aligned around a single goal. And it's a great opportunity for us to kind of celebrate each other and to encourage each other to achieve it. I think the patient outcomes at the end are a huge benefit, potentially. So we'll go on to the next one. It started in 2012 with data, kind of an idea of how this would, how AHA could recognize EMS, and it was something that would help us to bring in other agencies into a mindset of collecting data and meeting operational definitions and things. In 2013, the program was fully developed, and then in 2014 was the first year that they accepted applications. And the time frame for the applications has changed a little bit, so that's kind of nice. We had a little more time to put it in. But the first year, there were 200 of us that achieved it, and I think there were some concerns with volume at that time, and the award has changed in the last few years too. It's added some features, both in optional reporting and in the requirements, and they've also added a plus, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So if we'll go on to the next slide. So the application period, it says, is open from January 1st to April 2nd. Lonnie, we may want to check that date because I seem to remember that it's always from the 1st of January to the end of March, and last year it was April 2nd because it was the Monday, the first business day. But the Monday, the business day, this next year should be April 1st. So, but one day.
We'll double check it, Jason.
All right, cool. It gives you lots of time though, so it's a full 3-month window. So you can start it in January 1st, and then you can finish it like a month or 6 weeks later, and that's fine. Our application, sometimes I get it in very quickly, and sometimes it takes me a week or so to get all the data together to actually submit it. The application is online. It's all your own data. It's self-reported. It is a very simple application to complete. It is not always as simple to gather the information, though. The information can be a little more challenging, but I think there's some ways of making that easier, especially when you're this early in the year. You know, it's not December. It's June. You're pretty good. July is pretty good. There's individual applications if you have one agency, or if you have more than one agency, you can use a joint application. So if your service area includes 2 EMS agencies that work together, you can apply together, which is kind of cool because that way you can meet that volume requirement when you are in a less populous county. I know that's a huge challenge because you know in Austin we only see about 30 STEMIs a month, and we have 1.5 million people. I can only imagine how challenging it will be in smaller communities, so having 2 will help. The application also has the ability to include team members. We do that a lot. We include all of the fire departments that respond with us as team member agencies so that we can spread recognition amongst everybody who works to try to improve STEMI care for our patients. I think it's really valuable to have that because anybody who is on that team also gets a thing that they can, a certificate that they can display. You can frame it and put it up, and I think that's really nice for everyone who's on the team to see the work that they've done. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There's 3 levels, and there's actually 3 levels, but then there's also a plus on each level too. So the first level is the bronze, and the bronze level you need to meet the measure, which is 1 calendar quarter of compliance, 75%. So you meet the goal 75% of the time, at least, only for 1 quarter. And if you do that and you have more than 4 STEMI patients in the calendar year, then you qualify for bronze. So the measures, the 75% and 4 patients, and it's only 1 quarter, so that's cool. Silver is where you're meeting that 75% compliance with the measure over the whole year. And it's an aggregate annual, so it's not just, it's averaged over that whole year. There's, you have to have at least 4 STEMI patients for the calendar year, so it's similar to the bronze, except the bronze is 1 quarter, the silver is for the whole year, right? The gold is just like the silver, except it's 2 years running. So if you get the silver in 2018, and you do the same performance in 2019, then you'll have a gold. It just converts. It's kind of cool. The plus part is a little bit extra. It's 1 extra piece of data and 1 extra measure. If you achieve that piece of data, also you're able to submit that and you achieve that performance, then you can qualify for the plus. It's not a separate application. It's all part of the same application. It's just a little bit of a extra level. If you're gold and you lose it 1 year, then I think you start over again at either silver or bronze. You can't go to gold again unless you're two consecutive years. We'll go ahead and go to the next one, unless somebody has questions and I'm talking too fast. All right, we'll go to the next one. There we go. Cool.
Hey, Jason, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
On the plus, are you going to touch on what exactly that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about the different recognition criteria here in a couple seconds.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. The plus was a real challenge for us this year, and I'll explain. Was there anybody else? Okay. So the first measure, and I'm going to read them and read them so we can talk about them. So these are all like process measures. They're not really outcome measures. They're all process measures, which is kind of makes it a little easier. The purpose of these measures is to measure the impact of care and outcomes. And to do that, you have an early 12-lead acquisition that you need, right? If you've got a STEMI patient, you got to get a 12-lead early. Then you have to recognize the STEMI. You have to notify the ED, and then you have to activate the cath lab, and then they have to actually have PCI done rapidly, or they have to be rapidly re-perfused. So I guess there's PCI or there's thrombolytics. So those are the kind of the components, and each of the measures will hit on one of those components, either early recognition or early notification or early reperfusion. So the first measure is what percentage of patients with non-traumatic chest pain or ACS symptoms, which may include chest pain, or other discomfort like ACS and anginal equivalents, and which of those in patients that are greater than 35 years old are treated and transported by EMS who receive a pre-hospital 12-lead. So that's that first component. You got to get a 12-lead in order for them to be called a STEMI, right? So this wants to know what percentage of patients who you think were ACS that are non-traumatic over 35 got a 12-lead. So for us, that was a bit of a query. We run off of chief complaints for this one. I don't use impressions. I use a chief complaint of chest pain. And then I added some other chief complaints that were anginal equivalents to try to get our full in. Just a little bit of a bear it can be. And then we query off of the age, and then we have a field in our EPCR for medical or trauma, and I pick only the medical, and that's how I get it. The measure 2, the second measure, is the percentage of hospital notification or 12-lead ECGs transmissions suggesting a STEMI alert that are performed within 10 minutes of the first positive STEMI 12-lead. So for us, we don't transmit widely. Most of ours are hospital notifications. So what I did on this one is I went back and looked at the notes to see when we stamped a phone call from the crew to the hospital, the receiving hospital. If I couldn't find that, then I used the hospital. We record all of our transmissions to the hospital, so I pulled the tapes and tried to find the hospital getting notified by the crew. This one is a fairly new measure, and this one was a little bit challenging for me to get, but maybe you guys will have better luck. It's always a work in progress, right? But it's important that they get notified, because if they don't get notified, they can't get their cath lab moving quickly. If they can't get their cath lab moving quickly, then the patient can't get PCI quickly. So that's the purpose of measure 2. And each of these measures, of course, is 75%. That's what you're shooting for, 75% for the year or 75% for the quarter, depending on how many of these you're going to have. If you get one a year, then it'll be per quarter. Measure 3 is the percentage of patients treated and transported directly to a STEMI receiving center with EMS first medical contact to device time of less than 90 minutes, and or the first EMS first medical contact to PCI less than 120 minutes when you have a long transport time, greater than 45 minutes, and a door to balloon that is less than 30 minutes. Oops. My computer went to sleep. Sorry. So that's the so if you have a really long transport time, previously that's been kind of a bear for you. I know we have some county units that have a really hard time getting to a STEMI receiving center in the time frame that would allow for primary PCI. At least in our region we do, because they don't have a hospital that's within 30 minutes. So how are they ever going to meet the measure? How are they ever going to get an award? And they've been working diligently, and they provide very good care, but they haven't been able to be recognized. So having this measure in here and having the ability to take into account transport time allows them to work on their performance and recognize their hard work and get the award that they deserve, which I think is really cool. Let's see. The next measure is on the next page. It's measure 4, and this is the percentage of STEMI patients treated or transported to a STEMI referring hospital for reperfusion. So this would be if you transport patients to a non-STEMI center and they get thrombolytics. So they want to know the percentage of patients that you take to that STEMI referring facility that have a door-to-needle time that's less than 30 minutes, or an initial EMS first medical contact to PCI of a transfer of a PCI patient that is less than 120. That sounds really complicated, and it sounds more difficult to write, I think, than it is. If I can probably explain a little bit better. If you guys have any questions about it, let me know. Anybody? Okay, cool. Okay. If there's no questions on those measures, then we'll go on to the next one. We can talk about the pluses also here in a minute. This is the new exclusion that was added this year, is to account for that drive time. So that second measure accounts for an extended travel delay. So if you have a really long transport time, if you have a time of your arrival at the ED minus the time of the scene departure, or to the time of scene departure, is less than 45 minutes. I'm sorry, is greater than 45 minutes. So if you have a really long drive, you can exclude it if you have the next 3 items as well. So if you have a PCI that is less than, that is a first medical contact to PCI, which is greater than 90 minutes, but less than 120 minutes, and the first medical contact to 12-lead ECG is less than 10 minutes, and the first positive 12-lead with a STEMI to the hospital notification is less than 10 minutes. So if you meet the measure on your notification, and you meet the measure on your 12-lead time, and the hospital meets its measure basically on PCI, then your transport time can kind of come out. Does that make sense? As long as it's over 45 minutes. So I think that's pretty cool. There's also a whole series of reporting events, reporting measures. I'm sorry, and we'll talk about those on the next slide. The problem with the reporting measures for me is I don't collect these, and I don't report out on many of them. So for me, these have been real challenges. For you, they may be something that you can measure better. I see the value in measuring them. I just I don't have the ability without retooling a lot of stuff. There's 4 reporting measures. These are optional, so if you don't have them, don't let that discourage you from applying. I apply and I don't report them because I don't have them. The first measure is the percentage of patients with suspected stroke for whom advance notification was provided to the destination hospital. So for me, I had to pull all the tapes for the STEMI, and I just didn't want to do all that work for stroke. So I didn't. But if I could, I think that'd be a neat thing to measure, and it's something that helps me think, oh, it's probably something I need to measure in the future because there's a gap that we may have there that I don't know about. Reporting measure B is the percentage of patients with suspected stroke that are treated and transported who had a documented last known well time. Did somebody have a question, or is that just somebody joining or dropping, I guess? So on measure B...
sorry, Jason. I think that was somebody just joining us.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry. So the last known well time for me was a challenge because we don't currently record last known well. We record an onset. So we're trying to change our data set to record last known well. It's subtle, but it's different. The onset was the time that somebody said they noticed them different, whereas the last known well would be obviously earlier than that. So we didn't have a place in our PCR for last known well, but it's a lot more valuable than onset. So we're working on changing that. Reporting measure C is the percentage of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests of suspected cardiac etiology with ROSC in the field, with ROSC maintained to the ED who had a 12-lead acquired. So that one we reported out. That one's a little bit easier for us to get. Our measure was not as great as I would think because we had a lot of patients who still had that re-arrested multiple times on the way in and then had ROSC when they left the scene and then had ROSC again when they arrived. So it said maintained to the ED, but it was hard for me to tease those out. So for me, there was a little bit of a data barrier, but it's a good challenge to try to come up with for next year. See if I can figure that one out. Maybe you guys can and share it. We can all do better together. Reporting measure D is the percentage of patients with non-traumatic chest pains and ACS symptoms, which may include chest pain or discomfort in other areas of the body, arm, jaw, so forth, that you think that is a cardiac origin, shortness of breath, sweating, nausea, so all of your angina equivalents in patients who are over 35, treated and transported by EMS who received aspirin, either by EMS or self-administration. So we already recorded this one for our internal measures, so this one was easy for me to pull. We have the query built. I don't know if you guys have ESO or if you have ZOL, but I think it's a measure that you can probably pull from either one, or if you have a different one, you may even have better data capabilities. But that's it pretty much for the optional reporting. You know, I promised something about the plus, and I don't actually have a slide on the plus, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember what the plus measures were for this year. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. I missed it. How's that? So the plus measure is using the same population as measure 1. So you get the patients who have the 12-lead within 10 minutes that you already reported on. And let's see. So those patients who had, you want the percentage of patients using the same population, the percentage of 12-lead performed within 10 minutes of the first medical contact. Oh, that's right. So it's the same as measure 1, except you have a time on it. So the first measure, you get the the number of people who actually got the 12 lead who had ACS symptoms, and then the plus measure, it's the number of people who got that 12 lead within 10 minutes of the crew's arrival on the scene, or the first medical contact, whichever you can record. This one was not too challenging because we already had all the data set for the first one, so I just pulled over the times, which was fairly simple. So it's the same as the one, but the times. Our challenge was actually, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, about what challenges we had as an agency for this and how we're working on overcoming them. We had some late EKGs that we weren't really at risk of the 75%, but that's the joy of measuring something, is that you discover, hey, this isn't really where I think we should be. This is an area we can work on, and I can see year to year how we're changing and see if we're getting better or see if we're getting worse and see what we need to work on and try new things. Let's go on to that. Do you guys have any questions about the measures? Okay, then here's some of the strategies that I've employed. These are mine. For me, identifying the data sources early on is really important. You have to know what data you need to record in order to meet the measure, and then you have to work on setting that up, either manually to start or making it something that doesn't have to be so manual in the end. We've used our EPCR vendor to help with some of it, and some of it was manual to start. But identifying those sources early and then starting. So these are the data fields that I collect currently, and I put them all in a spreadsheet, and I just track them there. I've moved them into a better database recently just to keep it easy for me. These are all the fields that I collect. At the bottom, I collect the non-system delays. I'll talk about that in a few, but I get that from hospitals. And because sometimes hospitals have a difficulty crossing the lesion or something like that, when they're doing PCI, they can't get the needle, can't get the catheter across, and they'll convert it to a CABG. And when that happens, it's a non-system delay. It's nothing they did. It's just something that was wrong with the patient that the patient's condition wouldn't allow for it. So those are excluded. There's exclusions that allow for that. So I collect that as we review STEMIs. I try to review them as they occur. I have a lot of CPR calls that come up as STEMIs because they're STEMI after we get ROSC. So some of those have really extended scene times, and so I'm sure that I flag all of those when I see those too. It's a non-system delay, it's unavoidable, and it's not indicative of a problem in our care. It's just, we did CPR, good. And those come out, so those you don't have to report that you were delayed or something. So that's what I gather, and then on the next slide are kind of this is what I would recommend if you haven't started doing this. Then I would recommend contacting hospitals and asking them, asking to join their STEMI teams. Every hospital in our area has been really receptive to that, and we've been going to their STEMI meetings for the last probably 4 or 5 years. It's been really good. We've built relationships. I know all of the cath lab staff or all of the managers, and when they have a concern, they can call me, and when I have a concern, I can call them. The feedback goes back and forth very easily, and that relationship allows us to really work on small sets of time that may have delays, like 1 minute here and 1 minute there. If your time is long, you're never going to find a 5-minute section that you want to fix. You're going to find a lot of 30-second segments that you can shorten up on. There's no 20-minute lag time that's just waiting for you to go correct on the bulk of your calls. And then building that relationship helps to identify which people at that hospital are really passionate about STEMI care and stroke care, and lets you figure out who to talk to, because they're going to put in the extra mile for you, and they'll help to make sure that you get the feedback that you need and that you want. It'll help get you feedback and hospital reports on the patients that you take in, so that your crews can be excited about the care they provided too, and keep them engaged, because it's important. We get a report on every single STEMI activation, and we have a lot of STEMI activations that never go to the cath lab that we just overcalled. And they give us the feedback, which is good too, because that helps us in our EKG education, which it's kind of like getting free input to our CE process, which is kind of cool. And then the next thing we do is, on the next slide, we don't wait. We used to wait for the hospitals to send us feedback and stuff. I also waited to make sure that I could get all my measures before I started reporting things and started finding things. Start seeing what you can measure and start looking now. It'll keep you excited because it gets boring. And when you figure out how you can get things and start piecing things together, to me it was very, it kind of kept me going early on, because it's a lot of searching and a lot of banging your head trying to get the data together. We look at first medical contact at 12 lead and first medical contact at 12 lead resulting in a STEMI interpretation. So we have two different 12 leads, right? If the first 12 lead doesn't result in a STEMI, if they didn't see a STEMI, then that may not be the measure that you want. You're going to need the second measure too of when the STEMI was actually found. That became kind of interesting for us, because we found that a lot of our STEMIs were evolving. So that kind of helped us cement our CE process, because we could say, hey guys, be sure to get that, repetitive 12 leads, because sometimes we don't have a STEMI on our first EKG, but the second one does, the third one does. So it helped crews to see, wow, serial 12 leads really are valuable, which I think was pretty neat. The STEMI interpretation to notification was helpful for our communications medics, because they saw that we can pull that and we can say, hey, we're finding a STEMI, and we let our comm center know, and then our comm center makes a phone call. You guys may have a different process, but all of these little steps can provide somebody with feedback that's beneficial, that can help them understand the value. So I'd recommend measuring whatever you can early and start doing the feedback, and then you can grow it. So go to the next slide. These are some of the problems, or some of the fixes to some of the problems that we found. My feedback initially to our staff was really slow. I was waiting on feedback from hospitals. I wanted to be able to tell them, oh, that case you had, that STEMI that you had really was a STEMI, and it was great, and you did a good job, and this was what happened, and here's the beautiful picture from the cath lab. But what I found is that the hospitals were slow at times. Some hospitals were very quick, others were slow, and the inconsistency was very hard for me to schedule. So I couldn't keep up at times, and at times I couldn't match which feedback was for which patient. So for me, I separated the feedback from the hospital feedback. The feedback for the staff has to do with their time and their interpretation. I don't base it on the ER interpretation. It's a medic's interpretation, and it should be, in my view, compared to another medic's interpretation, because did they meet the measure? Did they meet? I give them feedback of did that EKG meet the definition that we use as a system for a STEMI? Not did the cardiologist think it was a STEMI? It's like, no, it met our definition, so it is. And that's fine. And that way I can give them feedback quickly also. I don't have to wait on anybody. Provide feedback. I provide feedback on the times. If they have delays, I try to find out why they had delays. We found a lot of barriers, apartment maps that were missing, things that were getting in the way of our ability to make contact with patients quickly, and the recording it and looking for it has allowed us to see gaps that providing feedback quickly and talking to staff quickly has helped. We also send updates to each individual provider, and I give every provider the solutions to problems that have been voiced by other providers. So if you have 5 STEMIs and you have 2 delays, I tell everybody in the system will learn about the 2 delays. Not that there was a delay, but here's something to watch out for. Here's something that could get in the way, and here's a way that you can combat that. That way you don't have to wait for a negative experience to be able to learn from that, and that's been really important for us. So we send out that update to everyone. I wish we sent it out more rapidly, but honestly, I'm a little slow with it. It only comes out about 4 times a year or 5 times a year, so it's not a rapid thing. We also teach that 12 leads should be related to complaint and not a differential diagnosis. This sounds obvious, but it's actually a big component for why we had delays in 12 leads. We'd have patients that complained of chest pain but had long stories of pneumonias and things like that. And the crew felt like they were treating pneumonia, and then they would start treating the patient, get the patient onto the stretcher, and then get a 12 lead because, well, they have chest pain, so we need to get a 12 lead. But they didn't do it early. The 12 lead would come really late. And so what I found is that we were getting 12 leads based on the medic's differential, not the patient's complaint. So we're trying to reverse that. Otherwise, we'll always have delays. And then the last thing that we do, or we try to do, is to share outcomes with the whole department. So when you have a good story, we try to let everybody know the good story. That way everyone can kind of get a piece of it, and everyone can kind of see, oh yeah, that's right, that's why we do this. It's not because, you know, Gilliam's going to come yell at me because of a time. It's because, hey, that time's valuable because that gives, you know, Grandpa another, you know, decade with his grandkids, and this makes a difference in people's lives. So those are our strategies, those are our problems, and this is how we've done it. Do you guys have any questions? I think I'm done with my strategies, at least.
That's fantastic, Jason.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so great. If anyone on the line has a question or a comment, I can see from the roster that we have other award-winning agency representatives on the line. If you have any best practices to share or ideas, I see Stacia Hickey, our National Center representatives on the line. If you have anything that you want to highlight, any changes this year. Jason, you are absolutely right. April 1st is the deadline for next year, so we'll have to change that from April 2nd to April 1st. Thanks for pointing that out. So we'll open it up. *6 to unmute your line if you have any questions or comments.
Jason, this is Daniel Chavez from Odessa. What platform do y'all use for your patient care reports? Are y'all using ESO or?
We don't use ESO yet. We currently use RescueNet reporting, a RescueNet from Zoll, but we're in the process of changing to ESO, so we should be with ESO probably by February.
Okay. Yeah, that's who we use, and we're very pleased with them as far as pulling analytics.
So I know that Danny Johns at Williamson County pulls the data with ESO. So if that's helpful, I know Danny works hard on that, and he may have solutions. I wish I knew more about ESO. I'm looking forward to learning because I think it'll solve a lot of our problems.
Well, I appreciate it. That was a good presentation.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Let me make sure we don't have any questions in the chat box. You can also type in questions in the chat box if you're not able to get your line off mute. And Stacia, anything to add? I think something that is going to make
Hey, Lonnie, it's Stacia. Am I off mute?
Hey, Stacia, you are off mute. Yep, thank you for joining us.
Oh, no problem. It's a great presentation. So I am available if anybody has any questions. There weren't any really new measures added this year. We just kind of rearranged some things. I know the plus measure last year made a lot of agencies a little bit worrisome about that. They weren't capturing that information, so we moved that to a reporting measure. So just to let you know, those reporting, I'm sorry, I'm in a loud venue. But I will say that the reporting measures are just measures we're trying to collect the data and to analyze, and they may become future measures. So we encourage EMS agencies to go ahead and start collecting those just in case, our clinical work group is looking at that data and seeing that, it's something that needs to be addressed nationally. You can already be in the process of collecting that. And so we're hoping to release some new resources for 2019 recognition, and we're very excited about that. We had over 480 award-winning agencies this year. That's not including the 200, I believe, 39 plus awards. So we're very proud and extremely excited about those who have participated and those who have achieved an award. And we encourage everyone to join our Mission Lifeline network. We will be re-releasing the list of award winners on there. There was some discrepancies in the list that was released earlier, so I pulled that down, and I'll be double-checking that and releasing an accurate list once I return to work the week of July 9th. So look for that new list of winners, and we appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacia. I know our agencies that have struggled with the volume will be pleased with the adjustments in the volume criteria. So if that's an area where you've struggled in the past and you've joined a call, take a look at the one-pager that we'll be sending out to everyone, as well as the slide set. And you may qualify where you might not have in the past. So I think that's a great improvement. Any other comments from anyone or questions? And star 6 to unmute your line if you have a question.
Yes, I was going to ask about the PowerPoint presentation. Y'all said it's going to be available. Are y'all sending those to us, or are y'all going to share it at some point?
Yeah, if you registered, if you put your email and when you registered, we'll have a list of folks who joined, and we'll be able to send those to you after. I don't think we get it immediately, but we should be able to get it to you by early next week.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before we close out? Okay, thank you so much, all of you, for joining, and thank you again, Jason, for leading the presentation and for being so actively involved, and congratulations on being an award winner again this year, and also congratulations to a number of other folks that we have on the line who received recognition this year as well. We know that represents a lot of hard work, so much appreciation. I hope everyone enjoys the weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.